Okay, so this is my second queer history presentation. So mine is a verbal tour because I use a mobility device. Luckily, it's going to be filmed, videotaped, and recorded. So for people who are not here, they'll get to see it. So I'm going to start off with a land acknowledgement. That's really important for me to do that. I acknowledge all the indigenous lands on which I live, love, laugh, and dance. And as a Carib person from Trinidad, it is very important for me to acknowledge all the indigenous lands here in Takaronto, which is covered by Treaty 13. And I issue a challenge, a call to action whenever I do a land acknowledgement. It is so important for every single one of us here and everywhere in Canada who are settlers that we use our privilege and our power to ensure that all Indigenous and Two-Spirit folks regain the rights and benefits which we take for granted on a daily basis. Take money out of your pockets, donate your time, do something concrete to support Indigenous and Two-Spirit folks. I am here today with Peter, who is one of the volunteers with the Imaginative Film Festival, an international film festival of Indigenous films. How many of you have heard of an Imaginative? And how many of you went to the festival? I just find it really interesting that we here in Toronto have the honor of hosting such an important international Indigenous film festival, and people don't show up. So why is that? It's one of the cheapest film festivals that happens here in Toronto, and it's a TIFF, it's accessible. It's accessible in terms of how little you pay, it's accessible to get to on the TTC. And it happens in October. So next year, I've been volunteering with them for more than 10 years now. That is how I give back. I am looking forward to seeing every single one of these faces here at Imaginative next year. I see this person smiling. I can see you smiling. So I'm looking for you. So please come out and support. When we talk about truth and reconciliation, that is how you do it concretely. Show up and show your support. So today, I'm talking about part 2 of my queer history tour. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is leZlie Lee Cam. My last name is Lee Cam, and it's leZlie with a capital Z. And I'm here today with Robin, one of my many mobility devices. It's important for you to see my mobility device because when we get to be a certain age, and you're going to find out, those of you who are not 50 yet, when you get to be 50, you become invisible. You're no longer a sexual being. Nobody sees you as being sexually viable. And I like to say all these parts, they work really well. So, just in case, you know, because people seem to think you're not going to get older. So yes, I've been around a long time. I'm a Jurassic dyke because I came out, it's now going to be 47 years ago, right here in Toronto. And coming out was something I knew nothing about because it wasn't part of my vocabulary or my experience. And for many of us who come from countries of color, that is not something we do because it's literally a death sentence coming out. So please be aware of the privilege that we have here in North America and European countries to come out and say, here, I'm queer, I'm gay, you know, however we want to name ourselves. So in terms of my many identities, I am a world majority person. I am not a visible minority. Visible minority is a term that was used by the federal government to keep us, people of color, in our place. So I identify as being a world majority person. I'm Carib, as I said. I'm indigenous from Trinidad and Tobago. I am Trini, you can tell by my lovely accent. I am brown, I identify as being brown. And I am Chinese. I am Indo. Indo is a term to describe indentured laborers who were brought over when slavery was abolished in the Caribbean and in other countries. And I am also differently abled, as you can see. I'm a bionic dyke also. I have I like to say bionic. Whenever I travel, it's truly a test for those people who the machines just keep going off. Because I have 2 new hips, and I have a new brain, and I have a new ankle. I'm just filled with titanium. And they don't like it when I go through those the scanning machines. And I am a queer dyke, now a senior, and I have been bestowed the honor of an elder by my indigenous and two-spirit friends. And just a little word of caution. I know many of us and many younger folks are using the word queer to describe themselves. When you are working with us, those of us who are 55 plus, that word is not a good word for us. So please be mindful how you use that word with anybody who is older in our many 2S LGBTQI communities, because there's no one community, there are many communities. And I've just coined the term rainbow seniors, and I like to use rainbow umbrella or rainbow folks, because for many of us who are older, again, this acronym is a mouthful. And it's easier in terms of saying rainbow to describe who we are. A lot of older people find it less threatening, and it's just easier to understand. So I want to thank Caitlin, Stephanie, and the Church-Wellesley BIA. And again, thank you all for being here. I know it's an odd time of the day, but it's nice to see so many folks here. And again, I'm going to say, please support Glad Day. I am just amazed that Glad Day is still here after so many years of COVID. So buy beverages, eat the food, come out, come out, come out. This has become a community hub. And I remember going to Glad Day back in 1978 when it was up on Yonge Street. You know where the main reference library is? It was just in that neighborhood. And I was there one afternoon. I snuck out of work. I used to work at Manulife Insurance, which is up at Jarvis and Bloor. And I snuck out and I went over to Glad Day, and I'm looking through all the different books. And all of a sudden I see my boss walking in. I know, he looked at me and I looked at him. We went our separate ways. And when we got back to the office, he called me in. So he had an office with a door. I didn't rank a door. All I had was a cubicle with a window. And he said, you know, we saw each other at that bookstore. He couldn't even say the name of the bookstore. And he said, please don't say anything to anybody. I know you are proud of being a dyke and you're out everywhere in Manulife and wherever you are in your life, but please keep my secret. So that's what it was like back then. And he had a very high managerial position at Manulife. So it was always, you know, us hiding. But Glad Day is still here. It went from Yonge up there to Yonge down. I forget where it was on Yonge Street, lower down. And now it's ended up here. So I just want to talk about 6 locations that I've chosen in terms of my location in these places and how I felt about going to these places. A lot of them don't exist anymore. A lot of them are condos now. So the first place, well, actually, I just wanted to say, Uh, they all have a very big significance in my life, because when I first discovered that I loved women, I had to find women for me to have orgasms with, because I discovered orgasms with a lovely Trini woman, and our relationship was discovered, and when her family found out that we were in a relationship together, they sent her back to Trinidad. She was here studying at Ryerson, so my heart was broken, but the orgasms were still on my mind. And there's a sign here, I think behind me, LOOT, the Lesbian Organization of Toronto. So that's where I came out, through the Lesbian Organization of Toronto. And I discovered many bars. Back then, what we did was go to bars and drink and dance, because that's all there was. And one of the places I went to was called the Q, the Quest. How many of you remember? Hey! So I went to the Quest for it used to be way up on 655 Young. So you're going to get a postcard if you haven't seen it already. And because I have a challenge in terms of my mobility, I'm asking you, when you have some time, to look at your postcard and go to these different addresses and see what's even there now. So I went to the Quest, and the Quest was a men's bar back then. And a friend took me there, and I had just come from a carpentry class, a night class, and I was wearing blue corduroy coveralls with a tool belt. So I had a little hammer, and I had a little saw, and I had some screwdrivers, you know, those old-fashioned ones with all the little, you know, things hanging off of them and pockets. And my friend Sid said, he was a white young guy, and he says, I'm taking you to the Quest. I'm going to see if we can get you to pass. So back then, I used to pass as a fag, because I weighed 90 pounds, my hair was very short, and we used to do this thing, this friend of mine and I, her name is Julie, she's now a drag king out in Vancouver, and she's doing drag at the age of 65. So there's hope for all of you here to keep going. So anyway, we go into the Quest, and I'm passing as a fag. Nobody stopped me. The only way a woman could go in there was with a man. But we were pretending that I was this fag. And so we go in there, and in the middle of the bar, there was a cage where only men were allowed to go and dance in this cage. And when you danced in the cage, they would put money into your pockets or into your waistband. So my friend Sid said, let's see if we can get you into the cage. So he gets me into the, and I'm saying, no, they're going to figure it out. He says, just keep your mouth shut. Then they won't know anything. They'll just think you're a little brown fag. And sure enough, I was a little brown fag, and they used to, back then we had $1 and $2 bills, like paper money. And so I went in, and I got a couple of bills, and by the end of my 3 dances, I had $10. Do you know how much beer you could buy for $10 back then? I could have treated all of you here to a beverage. So I don't know what's there. I think it might have become a Ginger's. I don't remember, because I don't access Yonge Street that high up anymore. So the Quest ran from 1970s to 1986 was when it closed. The next place I want to talk about is the Woman's Common, and this is the symbol, the button that was used for the Woman's Common. The Woman's Common was very unique for those of us who were dykes and lesbians. The building is actually still there. It's at 580 Parliament Street. And it was a building that was leased by us. We actually had the building for ourselves. And it was a restaurant, it was a club, there were rooms where different kinds of meetings were held. And what we did is we held fundraising parties in our homes. So my partner at the time and I had a fundraising party. I don't know if you were there. So my friend Dawn has been, we are friends for more than 40 years and has been with me through a lot of these travels. Thank you. And she's still alive and still going strong. And she's at MCC in the choir. She has an amazing voice. Yes. So the Quest was really a great place for us to go. Men used to come. Straight men found out we were there and used to come and harass us downstairs. So we always had a bouncer at the door. And I was one of the very few dykes of color who financially supported the Women's Common. Back then, there were not many of us who looked like me. Black and brown dykes and lesbians, we were few and far between. And I remember going there one night, and again, you know, in terms of secrecy, you used to come up the stairs and then you would come into the bar/restaurant. And I remember going up the stairs and there were booths and tables and chairs. And as I came up to the top of the stairs, I saw this woman, a brown woman, and I thought, she looks really familiar. And I put my glasses on and I looked at her, and she was one of my mother's friends. So she was in my mother's age group. And she saw me, and she was in a very cozy embrace with another woman. And she looked at me, and then she got up, and she sort of did this thing like, let's go back there. So I went back there, and she said, please don't tell your mother that I was here. And I said, well, why would I say anything? She says, you know, your mother thinks that I have a roommate. I remember roommates, good friends, the aunties who lived together. So in the Caribbean, that's what happens. You have two women. You never see two men living together, but they're always the aunties who live together. So this was one of the aunties. And that was the last time I saw her at the Women's Common. I saw her at my mother's place twice after that, and she pretended that we had never met. We had only met at my mother's place. So that's the kind of stress that we lived under. So here is this woman who is in my mother's age category, who's pretending to be straight, but could not be her true self. So now be so appreciative of the freedoms that you have now, because you never know when they're going to be taken away. The other place next, I don't know from the postcard what the numbers are on the postcard. That building actually is still there. So how many of you know of the Rose and Pope Joan? Yeah. Party, party, party. So the Rose / Pope Joan was one of the very few women's bars that were above ground, and was clean and it was decent, racist as hell, but it was still a place for us to go and dance. At one point, in summertime, they used to have it like a beach outside. They would put down tons of sand and umbrellas and palm trees. There was a pool table inside. You can get meals. It was sort of similar to this, where you can get dinners and light snacks in the evenings and on the weekends. And they also hosted the Not So Amazon Softball League. How many of you have heard of the Not So Amazon? Yeah. So the Not So Amazon League, they used to play down at Riverdale Park off of Parliament. Yeah, if you take one of those side streets, you go across, you'll see the park.
We still do.
Oh, you still play? It's still happening? Wow, that's amazing. So I was friends with a couple of the team members, and I remember one of the names of one of the T-shirts that I had was IMRU. You know what that is? I am, are you? They were very clever with their names. So I don't know how to play baseball. I could play cricket. But every season I had a T-shirt from a team. So I always had a T-shirt. And at the Rose, on a Sunday afternoon after the games were over, they would supply a plate of nachos and a pitcher of beer to all the team members that came after the games. And I always had a T-shirt. You had to have a T-shirt to be able to go in to have the nachos and the beer. So I was always there with my T-shirt on, and it was really funny because the other players would come and say, but what game were you in? Did your team play my team today? And I said, yes, didn't you see me on the field? I was, shortstop out there, or I was I never played a single game. But I wanted those nachos and beer. Unfortunately, when I talked about racism, that was a reality for us, and we never went there unless we went in a group. And one of the things I always did, and I still do when I go to any kind of queer social event, if I see a woman of color who's there by herself, I always make a point of going over and saying hello. Because I know what it was like for me when I came out, and I used to be the only person going to some of these bars, and nobody said hello to me. So if you're out anywhere in a social setting and you see us, and when I say us now, I mean those of us who are older, please come over and say hello, especially if we are using mobility devices. One of the unfortunate situations for me at the Rose was in September of 1989. I was brutally assaulted by 2 cops. I was sitting outside the bar about 2 o'clock in the morning waiting for my friends to come outside, and 2 cops came up to me and started harassing me. One of them picked me up by my right arm and threw me down on the road and put his boot in the middle of my back, and there were other white lesbians and dykes there, and they did nothing, and I was screaming. And then my friends came out, and they came running over to the cops and said, stop, stop. And he picked me up, and he said to them, oh, she was right there. A car was coming right at her. I had to get her out of the way. And I said to him, I can see your badge number, and I can report you. And he said, go right ahead. It's going to be your word against mine and my partner's, and I can find out where you live. And that was the threat that we faced. Many of my black and brown friends had threats from the police. They used to follow us home when they found out where we lived. It was not a good situation back then. So the police are not my friends. So that's still a reality for many of us. I was the Dyke of Ceremonies for the Dyke Rally this year. I'm on the board of Pride Toronto, and I was chosen as the honored Dyke, and as a result, I was the Dyke of Ceremonies for the rally. And when I got home that Saturday evening, Saturday, June the 25th, there was a threat on my website from a woman who identified herself as a young white lesbian. And in the threat that she put on my website, she said, you need to go back where you came from. We don't want people like you on Church Street. And people like you just make our lives a living hell. What did I do? I was just up there saying, thank you all for being here. The world is great. Everybody's out in person again. And then I thought, what did I say? What did I say that was different? And then I realized I had not spoken publicly in almost 3 years because of COVID. And I said the same thing I always say, like what I just said to you tonight, coming out is a privilege, because it's not something we can do in our own countries. And that's what she attacked me for. And I was one of the honored seniors for the parade on Sunday. And on the Monday, she sent 2 emails to Pride Toronto saying they should not have me on the board because I was a threat to young lesbians, and she made all kinds of allegations against me. And I had to end up going to the police, and I was scared witless. I took a friend with me. The police, their attitudes have changed, which is nice. And they said to me, until she physically attacks you, there's nothing we can do. This person knows my phone number. This person knows my address because I'm in the 411 directory online. I'm working now on getting myself off, but it costs money to do that. So some of us are more at risk than others. And I live by myself. So what I had to do was tell my friends about it so they could keep me safe. So coming here, whenever I come down to Church Street now, I'm always looking around. You know, I know what she looks like. She's made threats to people who are of Arab descent. She's made threats to people who are South Asian. So this woman needs help, obviously. But you know, these are the things you never know what's going to happen to you when you have a public profile. To a lighter subject. So another bar, a lot of these bars were straight during the day and queer at night. I don't know how many of you have heard of Club Manhattan on Balmuto Street. I keep forgetting Dawn and I used to do these things. So the Manhattan was on Balmuto Street, 19 Balmuto. Do you know where Balmuto Street is? It's that street that runs parallel to Bay Street. And if you're coming east on Bloor, it runs between Bloor and Charles. It's a very short street. And it's a restaurant bar that was, it wasn't below ground, but it was at street level. You had to come from the sidewalk and go downstairs to it. And on Fridays and Saturdays, so during the day it was a Chinese restaurant, and in the evening, Fridays and Saturdays, it was a place where black and brown folks went to dance. It became queer. And what was interesting about that place was cops, undercover cops used to hang out there, and white men in business suits. It was very unusual that, you know, there we were, this black and brown queer crowd, and then you had these white men in suits sitting on the other side. So one side was a dance floor, the other side were tables and chairs where they were sitting. And I want to tell you about this especially because in 1999, we, dykes, lesbians, trans women, and two-spirit folks of color, we rented a truck from J&P Towing because we decided we wanted to have a big truck like the white boys in the Pride Parade. We spent a year fundraising. It was $3,500 to rent this truck just for an afternoon. And only J&P Towing rents those trucks. They rent them for Caravana, you know, the big trucks for Caravana. So we rented this truck and it came with a driver. And back then we were world majority lesbians. So I'm wearing my world majority lesbians t-shirt. Just make sure this is hanging right here. And we put up a sign on the truck because at that point in time, the TTC was running an ad that featured 2 Latino men, and the caption on the ad said, "Stop crime on the TTC." Who is committing crime on the TTC? Brown men. So we put up a sign on our truck, a huge sign that said, "Stop the criminalization of people of color, stop police racism." And we knew there was going to be trouble. So long story short, 2 big white cops came to us and said, "Take the sign down." We said, "No, we are not taking it down." And they went to the driver and they said to the driver, you know, J&P Towing has a contract with the police. You've seen their trucks, the red trucks with the blue J&P on the side. They tow cars during rush hour. And the cop said to this guy, you're going to lose your contract. And he said, there's nothing I can do. These lesbians rented me and the truck for the day. There's nothing I can do. And you can find out more about this. I'll tell you how to get the information. So anyway, this happened in June of 1999. I was at the bar with a couple of my friends from Queer Women Coloring the Century at Club Manhattan, sitting at a table, and sitting at the table next to us were these 4 white men. Found out 2 of the owners of J&P Towing and the other 2 were undercover cops up high in management. So I'm hearing the conversation about, oh, you know, those lesbians, those effing lesbians, they made me lose my contract. They had that truck there with that sign on it. And I'm thinking, yay, it actually worked. So they had no clue. So I leaned over and I said, I couldn't help overhearing, you know, you said those effing lesbians. And he says, are you one of them? I said, no, I'm not. I said, but I couldn't help overhearing that you lost your contract. And he said, yeah, they rented our truck. We couldn't help. They had the money. They rented the truck. And he was so angry. And he said, I can't believe my driver didn't do anything. And the cops are saying, well, we told you you were going to lose your contract. And he said, but I've already paid the price. If I get my hands on one of them, there's going to be hell to pay. And one of them was talking right. So it was like karma. They lost their contract for 6 months. So, you know, we protested, we did things. So when Black Lives Matter did their thing in 2014, we had already gone after the police and did something. But we didn't make a splash because as women of color, we don't count. But we were there protesting. So the other place I wanted to tell you about is the Kremlin. The Kremlin did not last very long. How many of you have heard of the Kremlin? There you go. I thought it was a figment of my imagination. Yeah, it was over at Jarvis at Granby, in one of those old mansions. It was amazing, all the different rooms you could go into and get into trouble and do all kinds of things. And it was a young crowd. So the Kremlin was the mid to late 1990s. Club Manhattan was also mid 1990s to late 1990s. And the Kremlin was fun. We used to go there to cruise. We used to go there to party. And it didn't last very long. And I suspect it was because of its name, because a lot of people were pissed off that this club called itself the Kremlin. But it was a place for us to go to. The next place I wanted to talk about, well, it's not actually a place. It was an event that Vanessa Dunn, have any of you heard of Vanessa Dunn? Vag Halen? Yes, I see a hand at the back. Yeah. Yes, so Vanessa is the lead singer for Vag Halen. And apparently, every now and then they play at Sweaty Betty's. I have to go check out Sweaty Betty's. Oh, wait, look at this. You didn't invite me. So, yeah, so Vanessa is still there playing at Sweaty Betty's. So we decided back in 2014, at that time I was with the Senior Pride Network, and there's one of the advisory committee members here from the Senior Pride Network. So the Senior Pride Network is an education and advocacy group for advocating for the rights of rainbow seniors, all rainbow seniors. And our focus has become primarily on our rights in long-term care homes and any kind of healthcare setting. So we decided something was needed because we were housed at the 519. Everybody has heard of the 519. But there was nothing happening socially for us because, as I said, when you get to be a certain age, you become invisible and you sort of fall off the end of the truck and that's it. So Vanessa and I decided that we were going to work from an intergenerational perspective. I always work from an intergenerational perspective. And we came up with this social event that was intergenerational. And we made sure it was intergenerational because it's really important for queer young folks to be working with queer older folks, because we are experiencing some of the same challenges and struggles, and that's why we need to be able to support each other and work together. So we created Time After Time, and we named it the Cyndi Lauper song, Time After Time. And the first, we started 2014 to 2018, we were at the 519. We actually had one here at Glad Day in 2017, I think it was. And that was in partnership with Bricks and Glitter. Anybody here heard of Bricks and Glitter? It's an alternative to Pride Toronto. Bricks and Glitter is housed at Unit 2 on Sterling Road. I strongly recommend you look up Bricks and Glitter. We do amazing programming. Our festival is usually held in August and September. So check out Bricks and Glitter. So all of our events, our Time After Time events were free. There was food, there was entertainment, we had DJs, and we always did it in partnership, with other organizations like Buddies in Bad Times Theater, the Youth Elders Project, with the 519, with the Senior Pride Network, and also with Women's Health and Women's Hands. It's really important for me and also for Vanessa, when you're doing this kind of work, especially when it's intergenerational, that you partner with other organizations. It saves on costs, and also you have other people coming in who benefit in the long run. In terms of, we also provided PSWs. VHA, which is Visiting Homemakers Association, is one of the largest home care organizations in Ontario. Provided us with free PSW support. So we tried as much as possible to make Time After Time accessible, enjoyable. We had door prizes. You were there a couple of times, Gord, and you know, people came and had fun. And we reached out to all the long-term care homes. Fudger was one of the homes that also partnered with us, just to make sure that there were places for Rainbow seniors to go and enjoy themselves. And most recently, I have been working with the City of Toronto Senior Services Long-Term Care Department. We just developed a new toolkit in terms of how to work and support Rainbow seniors. It's called Leading and Learning with Pride. You can look that up. And that was also done in partnership with the Senior Pride Network. So this may sound like you're probably thinking, why is leZlie talking about this? Because it's really important for you to understand and to realize the need for support for Rainbow seniors. And looking around the room, I can see many of you are not in need of those kinds of services right now, but you are going to need those services. So I am asking for your support and your partnerships to be working with us. And I also want to talk, I just spoke about queer women coloring the century and world majority lesbians. So there was no presence of folks of color in the Toronto Pride Parade until 1991. And I was part of a group called Lesbians of Color. We started in the parade in 1991. In 1992, a young brown Trini man by the name of Anthony Muhammad came to us. Some of you may know Anthony. So Anthony came to us, Lesbians of Color, and he came up to me and he said, "Oh, you're leZlie Lee Cam, and I know you're from Trinidad, and I'm from Trinidad too. Let's do a soca jump up thing next year in 1992. So we got together and we formed a group called the Proud and Visible Coalition. And we rented a little pickup truck, a little red pickup truck. And we went into the parade with our sound system, and we had 6 canvases on the truck. It was a huge thing for us, and it was a huge thing for Pride Toronto, because they had never sponsored anything. We went and we asked them for money, and they turned us down. And we suspect, again, because it was of racism, and we fundraised our own money and rented the pickup truck. But we discovered working with gay men wasn't such a great idea because they were very lazy, I have to say. And I can say that because I worked with them. So we cut them loose in '93, and we became world majority lesbians. So from '93 until '98, we were world majority lesbians. We had a presence in the Pride Parade. We tried to get into the Dyke March. They said, "We don't want you." We said, "To hell with you." And in 1999, we were queer women coloring the century with our big big red truck. So I just wanted to let you know, for more history of this from 91 to 99, I just did a digital residency on Instagram. I had no idea how Instagram works. I have 300 plus followers. I don't know what they're following because I don't know how to post anything. So somebody saw me on the street the other day and they said, "Why aren't you posting? I'm one of your followers." I said, "Well, what are you following?" I don't know. But Lemon Tree Creations, has anybody heard of Lemon Tree Creations? So Lemon Tree Creations is a QT BIPOC collective. And they approached me back in July and said, "We'd like you to do a digital residency for us." And I said, "I have no idea what that means. I know what a residency is, but I don't know what digital residency means." Anyway, long story short, they created a format for me, and my art is storytelling. And it ran from October the 31st until November the 5th. And it just ended on Sunday with a live Q&A. It's still on Instagram. So if you go to @lemontree_creations, you will find my digital residency. And what I did for that week was tell the story of my advocacy with my different groups from 1991 to 1999. So I strongly encourage you to take a look. And the half-hour live Q&A was also recorded, and that is also up there. So the other thing you can do, too, in terms of queer history is look up 2 anthologies, Any Other Way, Toronto, Any Other Way, How Toronto Got Queer, and also Marvelous Grounds. So those 2 anthologies give you a lot of history of how Toronto got queer from a white perspective and also from a black and brown perspective. And it wasn't until 2022, this year, that Pride Toronto had its first official Queer Seniors event. Does that tell you anything? Yes. Took a long time. So when I did this previously, when was it, September? So I love telling the story, because I volunteered with Pride for more than 12 years, and I kept harassing them and saying, "When are you going to do something for queer seniors?" And they said, well, why should we? Why should we? You know, like, they seem to think that they're in this never, never land where nobody's going to get older. And I said, let me show you your programs here, because I keep the programs. And for 3 years, they were funding an event for dogs. Dogs. And I said, so you're funding an event for dogs and nothing for queer seniors? I said, where is the money coming from? Purina. I said, I'm going to go to Purina, and I'm going to get the money from Purina, and it's going to be seniors and dogs. And I stood up at one of their AGMs.
Dogs don't really do anything.
Hey, Patricia. So I stood up in the AGM and I said this thing about the dogs and nothing for seniors, and the media just surrounded me. And somebody from Pride Management came running over and said, please stop talking. Stop talking about the dogs. And lo and behold, they gave me money for the Senior Pride Network and Buddies and the 519 to do Time After Time in 2017. So this is what it takes, you know. You know, it's a constant battle to be recognized, the value of your life and what you've contributed to this city, to this cause, and then not be recognized. There's a new ED at Pride now, and he's on board, and he's one of my biggest supporters. But I keep saying, I don't want to be the Dyke Senior. I want us to be working from an intergenerational perspective together. That is what I want. And one of the questions I got asked at the live Q&A on Sunday was, what do you want your legacy to be? This here is not my legacy, it's our legacy. We have to make sure, because right now, you're sitting here thinking, I'm a lot younger than she is. Well, guess what? The 16 and 17 and 18-year-olds are looking at all of you and thinking, they are ancient. No, seriously. So, no, but stop and think. Stop and think about what your legacy is going to be. And who is going to be showing them the way? Who is going to be there to support them? If it's not you, then who? So I'm not going to be here forever. You know. So please think about that. So I'm asking you to please write down your stories. Oral stories are so important. Write down your stories for these generations that are coming up now, because they won't have anything to, you know, what will they know? Because look at what's happening in the city. The bars are gone. Everything is online now. Everything is digital. All these different Tinder and Grindr and all these different sites. I'm meeting young folks who don't even know how to carry on a conversation unless they're texting. So I am the program coordinator for the Youth Elders Project at Buddies. We meet monthly online. We're going to be having in-person Sunday salons at Buddies. So please check the Buddies website for things that we're going to be doing. We're trying our best to be engaging younger queer folks. At one point, we had only younger queer folks attending the sessions. Now we have more queer seniors. Buddies started to get worried. We're taking over. But no, I have to say I really enjoy working with Buddies because they recognize the importance of intergenerational work. And I can't stress it enough how important it is for everybody who is sitting here today who is under the age of 45 to start supporting each other and look at who is in your life. I just came back from Barbados at the end of October, where I did a workshop for them. It was an LBTIQ, that's the acronym that they use. It was a women's conference. And they asked me to do a workshop on the invisibility of rainbow seniors in the Caribbean. So it's not only happening here, it's happening everywhere. I met a funder from the US State Department who said, can you come and do your workshop, in the US? There's only one organization in the USA called SAGE that's doing any work on queer seniors. And we are struggling, the world is struggling, so we really need to be supporting each other. So again, I'm asking you, write your stories down, think about where you are in the world, how you can support each other. Not even asking you to support me, support each other. So thanks again for everybody being here today, and thank you to Caitlin and the Church-Wellesley BIA, and I don't know if is Adam here? No. So there's a person by the name of Adam Wynn who was really helpful in terms of when I was putting these stories together to give me addresses of places. So Adam is a really great queer historian. So thank you to Adam, and thank you for your time and your presence here today. And if you want to be in touch, you can find my website, leslieoutofthecloset.com. But I do have a little celebrity guest who would like to say hello. Would you like to meet that celebrity? Where's my bag? This is my little bag of tricks. So, the Queen of Queer Seniors. Says, thank you so much for being here.